Hello and welcome back to another Monster Monday, a series where I draw a creature from D&D and I talk about its lore and its history and what it's like to fight. These videos are based on your suggestions, and then they're voted on by my patrons over on Patreon to see which ones I should do next. And today's video is no different. Today's suggestion was made first by I Am the First Coolest about 11 months ago. It was just voted on by my patrons this month, so we're going to cover unicorns. Remember, if there's a monster you'd like to see me draw, make sure to leave your suggestion down in the comments section below, and head over to my Patreon page to vote on what monsters you'd like to see me draw in the next order. But anyway, unicorns are a classic, so let's get started with today's video. So I faced a lot of challenges in this Monster Monday that I really wasn't expecting. For starters, did you know that horses are hard to draw? I did not know that. I've never really tried to draw a horse before, so this was an interesting one. But also, my beloved Wacom tablet that I've used to do almost all my Monster Mondays finally broke during this piece. It's been held together with sellotape that kept sort of breaking and burning, and like there's little burn holes in the cable where this thing was dangerously unsafe. But it had been surviving that way for like 2 years. And finally, just whatever mystical threads and fibers that have been coiled within the cords of this thing had finally just frayed and been stretched enough to no longer communicate with the computer. So whenever I was drawing anything, it would suddenly sort of like skip over into the corner, which it's been doing for a while, and then start resizing the window instead of drawing lines and things like that. And it just became frustrating. I took it into a shop and I looked at some online tutorials, and everyone kind of concluded that this is dangerous and unsafe and pretty damaged piece of kit. But I've had lots of great memories with this Wacom tablet. It served me super well. It was something that 8 to 10 years old. It was a bamboo fun tablet, so it wasn't really designed with professional work in mind. It's kind of like an entry-level Wacom tablet designed for kind of like playing with drawing, if that makes sense. But every piece of work that I've ever digitally created has been done using this tablet. So it was really sad actually to see this go. So unfortunately, until I can afford a replacement, I think I'll be making some traditional art pieces for you guys, starting with today's video. And today, I think I'll use some inks. Unicorns have a long history in both D&D and in the real world. As far as D&D is concerned, they've been around for as long as the game has, showing up in the original white box set in 1974, and were described as creatures that can be ridden by maiden warriors and will obey them, which is a weirdly specific thing to comment on. But I suppose unicorns are often seen as something feminine, or representing femininity, I guess, that are often used to denote innocence and elegance and purity in fantasy literature, that now in the clear light of day seem a bit kind of neckbeardy. Similarly, in most ancient legends featuring unicorns, they're often designed as creatures to be captured and tamed, and that this is quite a task. The Hunt of the Unicorn, for example, a late Gothic story woven into 7 tapestries, sees several wealthily dressed noblemen tracking down a unicorn with the aid of huntsmen and hounds, and when they find it, they chain it to a pomegranate tree, which seems oddly reminiscent of the Greek legend of Persephone, the daughter of the goddess Demeter, who was kidnapped by Hades, the god of the underworld, to be his bride, and was trapped against her nature to be locked in the dark of the underworld after being tricked into eating the seeds of a pomegranate. Simultaneously, however, unicorns are also a metaphor for cunning resilience and fierceness. Here in Scotland, the unicorn is the national animal, chosen not just because of its legendary beauty, but because it's seen as a notoriously difficult creature to tame and capture. This represented Scotland's willingness to evade falling under the yoke of the English throne. When I was a tour guide here in Scotland, we used to say that unicorns were also chosen as the national animal because they like to hunt lions, the national animal of the country of my birth, England. But although this sentiment is still surely there, sadly that nugget of information lies in fiction. But the ferocity of unicorns is actually a huge part of their character in D&D. In D&D, we're told that unicorns were created by benevolent deities, primarily to guard places, objects, or people of great importance from evil. They're celestial beings, much like angels, but whereas angels are messengers, or perhaps soldiers, unicorns are instead guardians. They tend to inhabit forests and radiate a kind of celestial energy that causes mist to blanket their homes, flowers to bloom, and life to flourish. No open flames can burn in forests under their protection, and they grant advantage on stealth checks to creatures native to the zone. Healing abilities cast by good aligned creatures cause the maximum possible HP regeneration, and curses affecting good aligned creatures also fade away, while in the domain of the unicorn. Counter to this, it tiptoes through its forest so quietly as to not disturb its residents, and its mere presence calms the naturally chaotic attitudes of pixies, satyrs, and things like dryads. But if an evil creature treads foot in its sphere of influence, a unicorn will not rest until they are impaled on its shimmering horn. This is reflected in-game with the unicorn's horn attack, one of its 2 attacks that it can make per turn. It can make 1 hoof attack and 1 horn attack. The hooves deal 2d6 plus 4 damage, and the horn deals 1d8 plus 4 piercing damage, but also the unicorn gets a charge attack with this horn. Means if it moves at least 20 feet in a straight line towards a target before it uses this horn attack in the same turn, the horn deals an additional 2d8 piercing damage, and if the impaled creature doesn't pass a strength saving throw, it's also knocked prone. For a challenge rating 5 creature, that can be quite deadly. Unicorn's horns, both in Legend and in D&D, are famous for having healing properties. In D&D, this manifests an ability called Healing Touch that a unicorn can use 3 times per day to regenerate 2d8 plus 2 HP to a creature that it touches with the horn, and it cures diseases and poisons on the person as well. The Monster Manual describes the horn as the focus of its power, a shard of divine magic wrought in spiraling ivory. So there, presumably the reason why a unicorn can also cast spells like Calm Emotions, Druidcraft, Pass Without Trace, Dispel Evil and Good, Entangle, and things like that. But also through their horn, or perhaps through divine intervention marked upon them when they're created by a god, they're also resistant to magic, and this might also be why all of their attacks count as magical as well. They can also channel energy through the horn to teleport themselves and up to 5 other people up to a mile away, and this might be why some of their legendary actions, they get 3 legendary actions, include a powerful self-heal and an ability called the Shimmering Shield power, which costs 2 of its 3 actions, and allows the unicorn to create a shimmering magical field around itself, or someone that it wants to protect within 60 feet of it, granting an additional 2 AC until the end of the unicorn's next turn. The unicorn only has 12 AC, but that could be really useful if it wants to have 14 AC. These guys are often favoured as paladin mounts as well, so this could be a really good way to beef up the tankiness of your paladin. But if the horn is the origin of all these amazing powers, then there's no wonder really why this kind of material, this unicorn horn, is so sought after. In the real world, unicorn horn, which was usually narwhal, or narwhal if you're from the States, narwhal horn, or powdered walrus ivory, was given as gifts to important people throughout the 1500s to 1700s, and is known as a substance called alicorn. It was believed to cure diseases, or at least detect poisons and diseases. It was supposed to bring good luck, and have a variety of other supernatural claims. In D&D, however, alicorn is used as a power focus for spellcasters and can deliver impressive spells through wands, add divine energy to weapon attacks, or be ground into dust to empower the inks used in spell scroll writing, or added to the alchemical brews to make potions. As a DM, I definitely give anyone who used or cast spells with alicorn infused items to deal this sort of maximum healing that a spell can possibly do, perhaps 3 times a day due to its source, and the cost, both financially and morally, that comes from harvesting unicorn horn in this way. Because a unicorn is such a pure creature that to harvest this horn, to kill this celestial being, automatically makes you the enemy of the god that created the unicorn, and the divine wrath of this deity can take any number of unspeakably horrible forms. It's definitely time to go Old Testament on someone if they kill a unicorn. And one of the things that really interested me about unicorns was what they looked like, because I'm sure we all know and fine well, it's a pretty clear picture in just about everybody's heads, just a horse with a narwhal's sort of horn protruding from its head. Interesting fact about narwhal horns before I carry on, they don't protrude from the brow, like the centre of the brow of this creature, like a unicorn's do. They're actually at a bit of an angle, and that's because they are in fact a massive tooth, not a horn. They grow from the jaw in this kind of spiralling pattern, and they're weirdly spongy and soft and composed slightly differently to human teeth. They're covered in sensitive tubules which connect to a network of nerves running throughout the center, so that the narwhal can sense vibrations and temperature changes in the water. People originally thought that these huge tusks, the only straight tusks in the animal kingdom, were to ward off predators or to fight rival mates during mating season, but apparently these spiraling, slightly flexible teeth would probably feel more like biting down on an ice cream if they were used in combat, so they definitely shy away from it, although they have been observed rubbing these horns against one another, potentially affectionately. Anyway, toothy tusky horns aside, unicorn appearances, that's what I was talking about. In D&D, they have cleft hooves. Unlike horses, who have the most unsettling hooves I've ever seen, because horses have this kind of solid, keratinized tissue at the end of their legs. Putting horses' hooves into perspective, they have normal legs as we would understand them, then they have a single lump known as a digit, so essentially a thumb or a finger, at the very end, with this keratinized tissue over the top. So horses essentially walk around, support their entire weight on one thick, huge toe, and by extension, walk around on a giant toenail or a fingernail which supports their entire body weight, which made me shudder enormously. But unicorns having cleft hooves, more like deer, pigs, antelopes, goats, and the like, where they have many little toes, usually between 2 and 4, that make up a proper foot that I can relate to, and they walk on, again, keratinized hooves that protrude from those feet. But at one time, unicorns were believed to have elephant feet. And that's because throughout antiquity, rather than being a legendary creature, they were believed to be actually real, but very, very rare. This was due in large part to the supposed observations of everyone's favourite 1st century naturalist and author, Pliny the Elder of Rome. He called these creatures monokeros, one horn. And they were believed to be his interpretation of rhinoceroses, like the fact that they have, 2 little horns. Well, one big horn and one, you know what I mean. And therefore, later on, the word unicorn was actually fairly interchangeable with the word monoceros. Prior to that, though, we know that Pliny kind of based his observations on a Greek physician called Ctesias, who in 398 BCE wrote of unicorns as wild asses, which are as big as a horse, or even bigger. Their bodies are white, their heads are dark red, and their eyes are a deep blue. They have a single horn on their forehead, which is approximately half a meter long. Pliny then popularized this description by adding that they resembled a horse, but with the head of a stag, the feet of an elephant, and the tail of a boar, and apparently they had a 3-foot-long black horn. He commented that it was impossible to capture a unicorn, and that they are one of the fiercest creatures imaginable. It's now believed that Ctesias' observations were made perhaps of Indian rhinos, Himalayan antelopes, wild asses in Africa, or even the oryx, based on the locations of where these reports came from. Later, a man named Oberon Zell Ravenheart, killer name, a real-life wizard and teacher from Missouri in the States, was inspired by the potential of unicorns having been a real-life creature and somehow connected genetically to existing creatures and everyday animals. Noticing that horses tend not to sport massive horns on their heads, but really wanting a unicorn, he instead selectively bred long-legged, white-haired goats in the 1970s and 80s and performed surgery on them at an early age. Most horn-bearing goats grow horns from specific node points just above their skulls, but Ravenheart, following similar research in the 1930s conducted by William Franklin Dove, who realized that the horn growth points in goats' heads were found in the actual skin prior to taking root in the skull and growing out of the skull if they were found early enough in life, and realized that by removing them and transplanting them both to the center of the creature's head when they took root in the skull, they would grow together into one single horn, much more like a unicorn. Ravenheart produced many such goats, which were all found to be pretty happy and healthy by vets of the time, despite how cruel all of that feels. Now, I can't be certain, but the goat connection is one that I'm pretty sure may have influenced later editions of D&D, because this was happening in the 70s and 80s. We know that unicorns appeared in the white box in the 70s, and perhaps hearing about this sensation later on influenced how unicorns were formed in D&D in later prints, because unicorns in D&D obviously have these cleft hooves, but also the males grow long beards, like a kind of billy goat. And that's just my theory. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I hope you enjoyed the kind of ink painting process. My patrons over on Patreon are helping me to fund me buying a new sort of Wacom tablet so I can get back to digital drawing, but that might take a little while. So in the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this style. It's what I'm going to need to do for the next few months, and I hope you enjoyed learning about unicorns. It was a really fun one for me. It was a kind of rabbit hole that kept going deeper and deeper, and there was a lot more to research if I had a bit more time. If you liked this video, please make sure to leave a little thumbs up, maybe favourite this video, and share it with your friends who are also unicorn fanatics. We're only baby unicorn foals ourselves, so anything that you can do like that really helps this channel to grow and establishes this community. So thank you very much for all of your help there. If you'd like to help support the channel in a more personal way and help me to be able to budget for a new Wacom tablet for digital drawings, please make sure to head over to my Patreon page or follow the link down in the description box below, where I am selling t-shirts of the logo and some other designs in the future. But until next time, make sure not to anger the local deity by slaying its unicorn, and happy monster hunting.